I am here with Judith Fayter, and she is the staff support person for the Covenant Commission for Antler River Watershed region. Thank you so much for joining us today, Judith. And you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of answers for churches that are in search mode. They're looking for a new minister, or maybe they've got questions about some of the paperwork that the region needs. So I'm going to ask you some questions that churches very often will come to pastoral charge supervisors with, and maybe you can help us out. Does that work for you?
I will do my best.
Perfect. So let's pretend that we've got a church who is looking for a new minister. Perhaps their previous minister has told them that she's about to retire. Where do they start? What's the first step there?
Well, the first thing they need to do is something called the Community of Faith Profiles.
Okay, so tell me a bit about that profile.
The profiles are some documents. The purpose is to find who you are, what you do, and what you dream might happen. And then also to look at the people and the resources you might have to make that happen as you go forward into a new stage in your journey in ministry.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a little bit more than just, okay, we need a new minister. It seems like there's a bit of vision work, there's a little bit of internal stuff. So can you compare that, just a slight compare-contrast to the old JNAC? Because I know lots of people are familiar with the JNAC. So what's the difference? What's similar?
Well, what's similar is that you're going to be looking at your demographics, your finances, the kinds of things you do. But this also involves a little bit more visioning. Some thinking about who you are and who you might be. And we do that with a document called the Living Faith Story.
So I looked through some of the documentation in one of the toolkits on the region website, and I saw this thing about a living faith story. It sounds kind of interesting, and it feels to me like maybe the United Church is stepping away a little bit from just paper for everything. I think one suggestion was you could even do that as a video. Tell me more about where this creativity comes into the living faith story.
Well, the Living Faith Story is a snapshot of who you are as a congregation, as a community of faith. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You can do that by filling out categories on the sheet that talk about the different areas of ministry, such as worship and pastoral care and Christian education and outreach. And you can do it with a video. Maybe you want to make a video of things that happen around your church, or a video talking to different groups in your church. You could do it with photographs. So with a slideshow, there are all kinds of different ways that you could create this picture, this snapshot of who you are.
And I bet that when churches are doing this, they probably learn a little bit about themselves too, don't they, in the process?
I think they learn a lot. For example, there was one church that never would have called itself a church that worked a lot on mission and outreach, that saw that as one of their primary activities. And yet when they started to do this process and they looked at the things they actually did and the activities and what they had passion for, they discovered that in fact, that was one of their priorities and one of the things that marked them out in their life as a congregation.
And I can picture being a minister, I can picture that would be really helpful if you've got a minister who is considering coming to work at that church, that having that church able to tell their story and really be honest about who they are and what's important to them, that must make a big difference in the matching process between a minister and a community of faith, and making a good match.
Exactly, because ministers fill out a similar set of documents. Prospective ministers are going to fill out documents that talk about their priorities and the things that they have strengths in and the places that they would like to grow. And it enables you to look at them and to say, oh, this is a congregation that looks like they're involved in something that I'm excited about, or where they need the gifts that I might have to offer.
We have to talk a little bit about the finances. So I remember there was a document was it the financial viability report? What's that all about?
Yes, there's a financial viability worksheet. And it can look daunting because it wants you to talk about 6 years. But please be assured that the actual form is a fill in the blanks mostly. So it gives you all the guidance. And it's looking at 6 years of trends in your congregation. So what has your income been like over the past 6 years? What have your expenditures been like over that time? It even addresses questions like, what percentage of your income have you been spending on utilities? Which you'd think is kind of a weird question, but it actually tells you something about the costs that your buildings are incurring in relationship to your income.
So that sounds like it might be painting a story, like it might be painting a picture or telling a story as well, kind of like that living faith story. It's kind of helping congregations understand what their financial status is. Do you have circumstances where people have to come up with new numbers, or can you mostly just go back to annual reports from previous years and fill in the blanks?
Most of those numbers should be readily available in your annual reports, and your treasurer should have them also on financial statements over the last 6 years. So you would just be able to, the treasurer or your chair of finance would be able to find those amounts. And that helps you look at, are your numbers stable? Have you had a slight drop and a slight rise? Or is there a sharp drop off? Where are you in terms of your finances? And that enables you to look at what's the level of ministry that you feel comfortable entering into. Are you going to want full-time? Do you want part-time? There are different categories of salary for ministers. So which category do you feel comfortable that you could fund for a minister coming in to work with you?
And then these documents, I understand they go back to the Covenant Commission. I think there's actually two places they go, right? Some of this goes to the Covenant Commission, some of it goes to Church Hub, and I know there's some confusion around that. Can you help clear that up for us?
Yeah, there is a lot of confusion around Church Hub. Church Hub is the last step. So once you've worked on the documents and you've had your consultations in the congregation, you've talked to everybody, and you think you have a good picture of it, and you've got everything ready, you submit it to the Covenant Commission. And the Commission's going to look at it, and their purpose in looking at it is just to say, everything looks good, or, oh, maybe you forgot this point, or maybe you didn't fill that part in, we don't have that information, just to make sure it's all together. Once it's approved, then you can put it on Church Hub.
Oh, so the Covenant Commission doesn't put it on Church Hub?
No, the congregation, your Church Hub account is your private account. And so you will put it up on Church Hub. And then the next thing that will happen is once it's approved, we let the Human Resources Commission know. Now, those are the people who do the pastoral relations part. They walk with you through finding your minister, through that process. So they will then take over from the Covenant Commission.
Okay. And so if I'm putting all this work into these documents and handing it to the Covenant Commission, I think lots of churches, in the back of their heads, they're feeling like, why? What's the purpose? So can you tell us what's the Covenant Commission going to do, and where do they fit in this mix? Are they just checking boxes, or are they supporting? Where does that all work?
The Covenant Commission wants to support and encourage the congregations to help you figure out who you are and where you're going, to help you answer these questions. And doing these documents, it isn't just let's fill in all the blanks because we need to get all the boxes ticked. It really is asking yourself some important questions as a community of faith. Who are we? Why do I want to be part of this community of faith? And here's a great question that's worded a way we don't usually think of. Why does God need you in your community?
That's a powerful question. And I can see how, if you're looking at these, what feel like just more paperwork, with that question in mind, I can see how the whole thing would look a little bit different.
That's right. You're going to be thinking about your purpose. What is the purpose of your ministry and your discipleship as church people within your wider community? And when you have a minister looking at these things, they're going to be saying, is this a place where I can bring my gifts, where I can enrich the ministry, where I can help these particular disciples of Christ find their way and their work in their place?
Well, you've actually beaten me to the next question I was going to ask you, because I can picture the flow right now. We've filled out the paperwork around our Living Faith story. We filled out some details about the last 6 years of the financial shape of the church. There's probably been some back and forth with the Covenant Commission, and they've buttoned everything up and they've approved it. So now as a church, we've submitted that to Church Hub. But we haven't talked about a minister yet. How does the minister know that we want them? How do they know what we're about, and how do we find a good match?
Okay, so the Human Resources Commission is going to step in at this point, and they are going to work with you on things like a position description and how, in fact, you undertake your search. They're going to appoint someone to be a liaison with you who will be with you during the search process. And then on Church Hub, what will happen is you will have a place for churches who are in search, and there is also a place for ministers who are searching. And so you are able to look at the different people who are looking for a new position, and ministers are able to look at the information on all the various churches.
So it almost acts like a match, almost a dating app between churches and ministers?
It kind of is, because you can look, do we match, do we fit? You see, if you look at your categories that you've prepared in your Living Faith story, and you look at the categories that ministers have prepared, you can see how they fit together. Is this someone that looks like they have kind of what you need? And they'll be looking at the same thing with you.
This sounds like a really well thought out process, and I know that we are now several years from the old JNAC, and we've kind of gone through a few different iterations. Remind me, what levels are we working at? So I know that the Covenant Commission is a regional thing. Is the Human Resources Commission, is that also regional or is that national?
Yes, the Human Resources is a regional commission. So our region works with commissions instead of committees. So these are groups that make decisions. They see the work and they make the decision. So the Covenant Commission supports and makes decisions around the work of congregations, and then the Human Resources Commission steps in and works and does the approvals for all the pastoral relations pieces.
Okay, now I've heard something about an Office of Vocations, and I know that is a national thing. Are they involved in this process at all?
Now, the Office of Vocation won't typically be involved in this. Their job is almost like an oversight body for ministry personnel. So their job is more directly with ministry personnel to make sure that people are in good standing, that they've fulfilled all the requirements that are needed. So that is their role, and that's a national role.
Okay. I'm feeling a little bit better about this. I appreciate your answers to the questions. Where else can I look for more resources?
Well, we have toolkits. They're called toolkits. And on the regional website under congregational support, you will find the toolkit that you will use for this process is toolkit number 2, Community of Faith Profiles. There's a handbook that walks you step by step through each document, as well as templates for the documents themselves. As I said, many of them you can just fill in the blanks, and it also has samples. So it's a very good resource.
Within our local congregation, who is it that should be doing this work? Is this the executive council? Is it the secretary? Is it the outgoing minister? Who should be doing this work?
This is the work that is assigned to your governing body, whether that's a council or an official board. And then they would choose. They may choose a specific group within the congregation. They may choose some members of the board to do it. But it is definitely the work of the governing body to assign, but of course they're going to consult as widely as they can with the entire congregation.
Will there be supports as the church is doing the work of building a Living Faith story and the financial review portion? Who do we turn to if we just need somebody? Are you the one we ask questions of?
That's what the staff person is there for, support. So you would contact me or whoever happens to be in that position whenever you're preparing these documents. And they can help you with questions, with concerns if you're not quite sure how to proceed with something, and help you through that process.
Well, you have answered an awful lot of questions. I very much appreciate your time today. And so what we'll do is we'll put some details here. We'll put links to email addresses and to websites. We'll link directly to that toolkit. There are many toolkits on the regional site, but toolkit number 2 is the important one, and we'll put a link directly to that in the description below as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Judith. This has been very helpful.
You're welcome.